I'm Justin Cohen. Welcome to Gurus. What are you great at? When you identify that, you kickstart excellence. So says Rene Carayol. He's been a critically acclaimed BBC presenter, sat on the boards of Pepsi and Marks and Spencer, and worked with leaders such as Bill Clinton, Kofi Annan, David Cameron, and Richard Branson. What he's discovered is that none of those leaders were great at everything, but what made them great was being great at something. Now he's going to show us how to be great too.
Hello, fabulous to be here. When I started my career far too many years ago, I left university and started working for Marks and Spencer's, one of the best British companies of all time. Little did I know that they were obsessed with what everyone wasn't so good at. You've all had an appraisal, performance management. You have the appraisal, you'll have 2 or 3 things you're very good at. And if you're like me, 112 things you're not so good at. And HR says, here's your personal development plan. The next 12 months, you're going to spend all of your time on the 112 things you're not so good at. How awful is that? How different would it be if we turned it upside down? I spent 10 years at Marks and Spencer's, coming in every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, leaving my personality at reception, going up to my place of work, working till 6:30, and on the way home, picking up my personality and going home. I was forced to be the person they wanted me to be. The phone rang, I'm on the board of Pepsi. I'm the only Brit on the board of Pepsi. I'm now working for the Americans. The first thing the chief executive, Larry, said to me, "Hey, Rene, what are you great at?" Well, I'm British. I couldn't possibly answer that question. I knew the 121 things I wasn't so good at, but I didn't know I was great at anything. Larry said, I need to find your spike, your superpower, what you're fantastic at. And my job as chief executive is to engineer situations where we can capitalize upon the things you're absolutely brilliant at. My life changed from that moment. All of a sudden, I wasn't living anyone else's dream. I was living my dream. And I've had the privilege of working with some of the best leaders on the planet. I've yet to meet an all-rounder. I've yet to meet one that's brilliant at everything. What I have met is those who are good at 2 or 3 things. They're so focused on them, they've honed them to near Olympian standard. And here's the rub. Once you've realized what your spikes are, the best leaders in the world surround themselves with people who compensate for the things they're not so good at. There need never, ever be losers anymore. Everybody can be a winner. Everybody can have 2 or 3 things they're brilliant at. Why wouldn't we want that? Thank you very much indeed.
Rene, welcome to Gurus.
My pleasure, sir. Good to be here, Justin.
So, the SWOT analysis, we just get rid of the W.
Do you know, everyone looks to catch people doing things wrong. The simplicity of catching people doing things right energizes everyone.
Absolutely.
Coming into work every day to demonstrate what you're good at every single day. Can you imagine the power of that?
Absolutely, and we know that high-performing teams are high-praise teams. There's a lot of appreciation. By the way, number 1 reason people leave a job is because they're not getting it. So I get what gets rewarded gets repeated. But what about looking at, coming back to the SWOT, the weakness, and let's find another term, our challenge points. I mean, do we not need to look at what's not working?
So this is very simple. If you look at any sports team, take a football team. The goalkeeper has a particular skill set. You wouldn't play them at centre forward, you wouldn't play them at right back, you wouldn't play them on the wing. We utilize their absolute strengths. Why don't we do that at work? Every team will have a number of individuals with standout strengths, each one covering a base of weakness. It's no longer possible for a boss to be so broad they can address every single issue on the table. It's no longer possible for the boss to be so learned in our changing turbulent times that they can answer every question. It's totally feasible for the team to be broad, for the team to answer every question. Every perceived weakness of the boss is covered in the team, just like a sports team. I don't think it's complex. I think it's compelling.
So have high expectations for one another. And we know the research on this. I mean, you're familiar with the fascinating research in the 60s. Teachers told certain kids are geniuses. Actually, they're average. And at the end of the year, those kids, their IQ has increased 4 points. And this has been replicated in the corporate world. When the manager has a high expectation, they tend to live up to that expectation. Managers with low expectations, when they say, my team can do nothing right, maybe they're living down to your low expectations.
Justin, this is great. When I talk about leadership today, contemporary leadership, I talk about, the model I use is mothers at home. Think about mothers at home. To this day, there are no university degree courses that cover leadership. There's no MBA program that covers leadership. But look at what mothers do every single minute of every single day, without a budget, without a salary, without KPIs, without the balanced scorecard. Every single day, they lead. They know that every single one of their charges needs a slightly different stroke. They know the inherent strengths of all of their children. They know where the boundaries are. They know how to push them. They know how to cajole, when to coax, when to push. But they understand the inherent strengths of every one of their kids. So it can't be that complex.
So it's leader as coach. Leader as, rather than just dictating, you actually need to listen and figure out where they're at.
We, historically, if we look at most organizational cultures, the culture was determined by supporting upwards, challenging down. That's prevalent here in South Africa. If I look at progressive contemporary business, it's the other way around. We challenge up and we support down.
Beautiful. And then you've got to be a strong leader who's able to put his ego in check and hear the news.
And in many respects, what we're demanding of the leader, there are some inherent things you're not so good at. But there are some people around you who can deliver those questions for you. Yeah. And nowadays, we talk about complementary spikes. And the example I use more than any is Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Whenever we see a new president of America, and I'm going to choose my words very carefully here, we know that when the vice president is chosen, their job is to complement the president. So if you look at Obama, new, fresh, inspirational, charismatic, but no experience of the Washington machinery. They chose Joe Biden, 30 years behind the curtains, doesn't want to be front of stage. They've been the most fantastic partnership you can find.
I think you just gave us the same formula for Trump and Pence, but in the reverse.
I think you need a lot of Pence to be the vice president.
A lot of Pence, and maybe a little less Trump. But you also make a very important point, Rene, about leadership being not one size fits all. There's different kinds of leadership, and you can't say that this is the only way.
This is such a great and important point. When we talk about management, one size fits everyone. There's only one way to manage. Remember, management was invented in 1899. It hasn't changed since. Management is all about getting more out of our workforce. Management is policing, it's audit. It's ensuring you're doing the things we asked you to do. It's quite a negative experience to be managed every day. Now, I'm not against management. If you don't manage, you'll go to business tomorrow. But leadership is something completely different. It's vision, people, teams, culture. It's an emotional connection. Managers tend to be pessimistic. Leaders have to be optimistic. When it comes to leadership, one size fits no one. Everyone in this auditorium can be a leader if they choose to be. It's not like money. You don't learn it. It's based upon your spikes.
And SPIKE stands for?
SPIKE stands for Strengths Proactively Identified, Kickstart Excellence.
Beautiful. So you've got to identify those strengths, and we see this. There's the famous story about Roger Bannister,
yes,
which I know you well know, first man to run the 4-minute mile. But the real hero of that story, Bannister's coach, Franz Stampfel, the day he runs the 4-minute mile, Stampfel says to him, you can do a 3:57 mile. He said, later on, he doesn't believe he ever would have done it had he not heard his coach say those words.
We perform to the level of expectation. If your boss thinks you're hopeless, guess what? You're probably going to be. If your boss thinks you're brilliant, guess what? I've had 30-odd appraisals in my career. Many, many weaknesses, many, many areas for improvement. The 3 strengths have been consistent for 30 years. There's only 3 of them. And I can share them with you now because I know what they are. And I've been lucky enough to understand what my spikes are and try and build a career around that. And they've always been, he can do the big picture. He can communicate a bit. And he's by far the most passionate on the team.
Look, I don't know about the communication thing. I'm not sure. But, I mean, yeah.
So I've ended up doing something that demands my 3 spikes. My team are nothing like me. They do all the things I'm hopeless at.
Beautiful.
Result, success.
How do we find our spikes?
Step number one, ask a loved one. Don't go for some scientific process to see if I can. It's not a science, it's an art form.
Not Strength Finder? You wouldn't do a psychometric?
Strength Finder 2.0 by Tom Rath is interesting, difficult, bleak, impenetrable, but worth a read.
But what do you really think about it, Rene?
I think it's more immediate than that.
Right.
Go to those who have lived with you, those who have loved with you.
What do people applaud you for? What do people thank you for? What do they appreciate you for?
They're the clues, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're the clues.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you speak to your loved ones, they won't use management speak. They'll say things like, he's generous, he's patient, he's kind. Then try and process that and work out, so how does that lend itself to the team I'm in or the place I want to be? 9 times out of 10, when we start speaking to people about their spikes, it's the eureka moment. The bubble comes up. I didn't realize those were my strengths. I guarantee you, Justin, I reckon I could guess yours. I could guess your spikes.
Oh, should we put him to the test?
On TV.
Should we put him to the test?
So
Okay.
curiosity is one of yours. It hits me in the face. Passion is another. And you have courage. You're not afraid to ask the searching questions. In fact, you love it. And I can feel it from here.
So firstly, thank you, because it's actually quite, it's quite touching having somebody recognize something inside you. I was quite moved just hearing you say
And
those
just
words.
imagine if your boss said that.
Yeah.
Guess how you
Yeah.
feel about your boss. Justin, come in here. I want to talk to you about the 3 things you're brilliant at. I've got an assignment, and it suits your inherent strengths. Guess how you'd feel?
Absolutely. I got to tell you this. Do it. If you haven't done it for your kids, I wish teachers would do this for their students, and bosses do this more, because it's one thing to recognize and appreciate, but when you recognize and appreciate something specific, you feel so seen, and now I want to live up to your expectations.
So here's a killer piece that we can all do. When you go home, look at your kids through different lenses. Not through where you want them to be. Think about what their strengths are. And help them to put their spikes to the fore. You've just delivered them the biggest asset for their career ever, bar none.
Rene, thank you so much. You know, had somebody said those words to me as a school kid, I think it could have changed my early life. And your message goes so much further than business, but wow, what a powerful impact it must have.
And you know,
business.
Justin, it's never too late to find your spikes.
Thank you. It's not too late for me. Thank you, Rene.